speaking of life stage stress, Stephanie, in our discussion, you made some significant life changes along the way in your career, as well as your lifestyle. Maybe you could share a little bit about what that was like, transitioning from the corporate world to what you're doing today.
Thanks, Eric. Yes, so I am an attorney, as Eric said, and being an attorney obviously comes with a lot of stress. And I started out as a public defender. After that position, I moved to a private firm as an associate. And while I was working there, the partners of the firm wanted me to put in just tons and tons of hours. I think during my 3-month review, they even told me to find a daycare that was open past 6:30 p.m. so that I could work longer. And they told me to do less with my horses, which is just not okay with me. So that was a life-changing moment for me, and I quit. That was just the bottom line. I wasn't going to put in any more hours. I remember a particular trial that we were doing in Driggs. It was a divorce trial, and we left Pocatello at 5 a.m. So, I got up probably 3 a.m. to get ready, and we got home at 10 p.m. And, that was just one trial. It wasn't every day, but that was, it takes a lot of hours and time, especially when I was the low woman on the totem pole. So I decided that was it. I made a change. And I went home, took a moment of self-reflection, and by that, it was probably days, weeks, months, and did a lot of asking questions about what I wanted, where I wanted to go, how I could get there, and have the life that I wanted with the minimal stress, the life balance with my family and my horses.
Wow. So, Michelle, I'm sure you've took away a lot of what you just said. Do you have any thoughts on what Stephanie, kind of went through, a major transition, from the corporate world into a whole new kind of career, and thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. It's really nice having you here, Stephanie, and hearing your story. The thing that stands out to me when I hear you speak is that you made a decision based on your sense of purpose in life and what was really meaningful and fulfilling to you. And, sense of purpose and meaning in life is really very highly correlated to emotional well-being. And I think when people make decisions like that, even though they're very challenging and stressful and changing financial situations and all sorts of stress that can come along with that, really examining your purpose and your meaning in life is super important. And that meaning and purpose changes through the lifespan. So I think, many of us know our purpose maybe in our 20s and 30s might be very different from our purpose in our 50s and 60s. But the key, and as you said, Stephanie, was like you spent weeks or months really examining, right, and asking yourself questions and looking inward, spending time with yourself and really what was important to you. So I applaud your decision.
Thank you.
That's great. And what was it like trying to manage that change while having children?
That was really difficult. It took a lot of evaluating the balance. I remember many discussions with my husband. Let me back up. So after I quit this career with the private firm, I ultimately decided to start my own law firm. So I'm out on my own. I'm making my own hours. I'm spending time with my family. But when I was going through this process, my husband and I had many, many discussions about, what my end goal was. And my end goal was to have some time with my kids at home, but I know that I'm the type of woman that also needs to have a career and I need to be working. And so the goal was to find that balance. So we evaluated, how much I was going to make starting at a law firm versus what it's going to cost for daycare. And daycare for 2 kids full time, as many people know, is very expensive. And so ultimately, what we decided with the kids situation is that we were going to send our kids to daycare half time. Our kids go to daycare Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursdays and Fridays, I stay home with them. If something comes up and I need to go to work, my husband also owns his own business, so we can be really flexible with our work schedules and how we're managing that. But I have a really great appreciation for that balance with the kids. It didn't come easily. It takes a lot of teamwork with my husband, and that teamwork it's so important to the kids and to our businesses. And I think that's where we really found the solution to managing the kids as well.
Wow. So I want to ask Michelle too, just how people can also manage through that. Before I do that, just for everybody listening, if you have questions, please use the Q&A function and ask questions, anything that might be on your mind, to myself, Michelle, Stephanie. Anyway, Michelle, thoughts on what?
Yeah, I mean, the word balance, right, is so interesting because as I'm sure you would agree, Stephanie, it's a new balance every day, right? We continually need to adjust our idea of what balance looks like because things change through the lifespan, right? So when you have younger kids, it might look a certain way. When you have teenagers, it might look differently. When you're caring for aging parents, it could look differently. So, balance, the goal of balance is one that I feel I'm constantly chasing. I don't know if I'm achieving most days, but I think it's a great goal. And I think a lot of people are working toward that, about really thinking about, again, what's meaningful to them and where do they want to put their time, their energy, their hours.
Yeah. So another one for you, Michelle, actually a question that just came in. As we approach graduation and prom dates, maybe prom is more relevant for you, Michelle, with your children. But what would you suggest for parents who have high school and college seniors who are missing these important milestones?
This is a really interesting time, right, for so many reasons. And we are noticing that these, especially when we think about high school seniors and college seniors, things like, not going to commencement, not going to prom, not having, sporting events, engagements, and these sort of milestones in their senior year. And it's a loss. I mean, I guess that's really how I would describe it. It's a loss. And when we feel loss, it's natural to feel grief. And even though we use perspective, right? We understand that not going to prom is not the same as losing someone to COVID, or, we can use perspective, and that's wonderful. It doesn't minimize the pain that we feel, right? Because emotions just don't work that way. Brene Brown beautifully talks about something called comparative suffering. And she basically says you can't put your suffering and someone else's suffering on a map and just sort of say it's not enough or it's more or less, because you have to acknowledge the emotion you have from loss. So I would say to these seniors, first and foremost, feel what you're feeling, right? Don't, talk your way out of it or feel ashamed. You shouldn't feel bad. And acknowledge that loss and talk about it with people that understand. And I would say celebrate your moment, whatever it looks like, virtually, with family, with friends, and really allow yourself to celebrate, because milestones and rituals, they give us a lot in our life. They're more than just, attending something. They are rites of passage in many ways.
Yeah. Another question that just came in too, Stephanie, having younger children at home, what would you suggest for parents of younger kids? What are you doing right now with your children to balance that along with everything else?
Get creative.
Yeah.
I think getting creative and finding a way to encourage your children to entertain themselves is so important. So this morning, my husband spent the morning to mid-afternoon at work, and then we kind of did this switch. So when I had the kids, we went outside and I did yard work and they played in the water. And recently it was my son's birthday. He turned 4 years old, and for his birthday we gave him a project. It was a sandbox. So he and his dad, they built the sandbox, and then we're continuing to play in it. Also today, I read an entire book on barrel racing while my kids played with Legos, and they would come show me their tower, and we would, excuse me, and then we would put the tower on the mantle and look at it. So I think really encouraging them to do things on their own, and while they do that, find something that you can do that makes you happy.
Wow. Another one that came in for you, Stephanie, very relevant. How do you manage rodeo performance stress in the context of being a mother who needs to be there for their children and manage your business all at the same time?
Well, right now there are no rodeos, unfortunately. But to manage that with kids, it's my inner circle. It's my husband. It's my family. I really count on those people to help me. My kids love coming to the rodeos. They love going and playing in the dirt with the other kids and getting dirty, but they can't do it without someone else there. So when it's rodeo time, we pack up in the horse trailer, and we go as a family, and we spend the weekend. And my husband takes over the kids, because when they're around me and they're holding onto my legs and I have the pressure of the competition looming, that can be hard. So having that worked out with my husband and that communicated has helped to make that stress minimal.
Cool. So a lot going on, and then with what's going on today, Michelle, when we're so worried about our future, which right now we're trying to figure out, how do we stay focused on today? What would you recommend?
Well, I think that people are carrying a lot of uncertainty, fear, stress. It occurred to me, I was thinking in anticipation of this topic, that so many questions that exist today, the answer is we don't know, or we don't know yet. And that's a lot to carry as a group to sit with, right? The stress of uncertainty. And I think as human beings, we prefer certainty. We prefer clarity. So I think there's really no margin in sort of going down the rabbit hole of fear and uncertainty and anxiety, because we really don't have control over a lot of things. So I think for me, what I would really recommend is just checking in with yourself more regularly, noticing where you're carrying stress in your body, and figuring out how you're doing emotionally every day. It's something as simple as just sort of waking up and asking yourself how you're doing, what kind of mood you're in, quietly taking a couple of deep breaths, noticing if there's tension in your body, in your shoulders, in your neck, really just being much more aware of what we're carrying. And secondly, once you know what you're carrying, really feel what you feel. I think that's the other big message of right now, is that I think that people are allowed to feel scared, sad, hopeless, disappointed, and we don't need to sort of, pretend we don't feel that way or feel ashamed or embarrassed to feel that way. It's a hard time, and I think fully acknowledging your feelings, talking to friends about it, talking to loved ones about it, will help you sort of, be able to transition to a more hopeful and positive outset when you're ready.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Stephanie, throughout your transition through your career and everything, Are there any regrets? I mean, are there anything that you wish you would have done or you did do and didn't? What would you say to others that are asking themselves a similar question?
It's a great question, Eric. And in retrospect, I don't think I have many regrets about my career, in part because I went for it. And I think when I look back, I had people tell me, don't be a lawyer. Don't go out on your own. Don't start your own law firm. You don't have enough gray hair to start your own law firm. And to some extent, that was true. But I could be sitting in that, private law firm as an associate working until 8 p.m. if I would prefer that. I think part of my stress is that I am a perfectionist and I'm high achieving and I go for the goals and I have high standards for myself. And so it's been very difficult for me, for me to accept and learn from failure and setbacks and mistakes. And so taking the plunge to start my own law firm or taking the plunge to go to law school when people were whispering in my ear not to do it, I had to just tell myself and affirm to myself that the mistakes were okay. I was going to make mistakes and that was okay. And because I did that, I took that plunge. I actually look back and I don't have many regrets. I think my regret would be if I was sitting at that private firm unhappy.
Yeah, for sure. Michelle, COVID is going to make us make major changes. This is a question that came in. What advice do you have for people that would be facing this?
Facing major changes?
Yeah. Especially I would say people who perhaps have lost their job and are uncertain, are they going to get, re-employed by their former employer? They lose someone to COVID. What are some thoughts there that you have on how to kind of manage through that stress?
Well, I mean, I think this is a devastating time for many, many people. I mean, obviously everyone's going through different scenarios of this, but there are people who are losing loved ones. There are people on the front lines working and being really, experiencing tremendous trauma. There are folks who are financially really struggling or uncertain about their futures financially. And, unlike many other traumas, it's not time limited. We don't exactly know when this is going to end, and we don't know the answers. We don't know what things are going to look like. So, as I said before, it's sitting with a tremendous amount of emotion. And this is not necessarily emotion we want to sit with. Yeah. Sadness, disappointment, and loss. But my suggestion is that we have to really almost lean into those emotions and have them and process them. And of course, when they are significant enough, they really need to reach out for everyone I know is doing therapy online. Everyone's doing practices online. I know people are doing pro bono work, low fee scales. I know that frontline workers are getting a lot of pro bono work. So, there's a tremendous amount of pain right now that people are in. So I think we need to feel it, we need to name it, we need to express it, and we need to talk about it.
Yeah. This one really is for both of you, I guess. Is life about finding the right amount of stress in life? Not too much, not too little? Michelle, maybe you want to say?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think that the way I understand amount of stress is, I think we talked a little bit about this last week, but there's sort of a sweet spot of stress that we want people to get. I think that we want people to feel motivated, and part of achievement can come from feeling like energized and, taking risks and opportunities. And those are stressful things. even positive events are associated with stress as well. So in some ways, when we're fully living, there is stress, but we don't want the stress to get so high that it interferes with people's ability to enjoy their life, function well, their cognitive ability to be well, and to really cause distress in how they function day to day.
And Stephanie, how would you think about that too? I mean, again, you're balancing a lot in your life, and as you know, we've talked. Stress is something that we all are born with. We'll all live with for all our lives. It's a built-in defense mechanism to protect us, to keep us safe. Just like, for instance, the pain response. So I'm just curious your thoughts on this as well.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely think that some stress is necessary and desired to some extent, because no matter what you do, whether it's at work or at home or with a hobby, conquering that stress and getting through a feat is so gratifying. And I thrive off of that feeling of accomplishment, but I can't get anything accomplished if I don't take a risk or do something hard or scary that makes me uncomfortable or stressed. So I think what your question was originally is whether there's a balance, and I think that there absolutely is. As a lawyer doing family law, I'm really particular about what cases I'm going to accept and which cases I'm not going to accept. Mostly because some of them are going to create unnecessary stress. They're all stressful, but some of them are less stressful than others. And I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to accept something that creates unnecessary stress. So I'll accept them if it's a stress that's within management and something that I'm okay with.
Okay, great. I got a very interesting question here that just came in. There's fear for older adults in our family, afraid to go out, people in their 60s and 70s, even if they can go back to work, they fear that they may get sick. How to handle the future uncertainty in our life stage of being older, but still needing to work outside the home. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's really difficult, and it makes perfect sense. So when we talk about seniors, when we talk about this population, we understand that they are more vulnerable to getting this virus. And a surge in anxiety about getting sick makes complete is appropriate, right? That's a reality. But like you said, if people are needing to go out and get some things or go back to work, hopefully there are precautions that people are taking and they work within a system where they can manage it. But fear is very real for people. And again, I think when that does get too intense, you do want to think about talking to someone about your fears and sort of gauging, are they realistic? Are they protecting you? Or have they passed a point where maybe there are some things you could do, but you're afraid to, right? Because fear is an appropriate response here, especially for the most vulnerable population.
Mm. And Stephanie, are your family close to where you're at?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I have parents here, and then I have parents a couple hours away. So I have, two sets of wonderful parents and see them often. Not quite as often with this coronavirus, excuse me, the coronavirus situation. But I think mostly because of that same fear, we're trying to minimize our exposure and being around each other, but to some extent we want to see each other too. So it is a really hard balance when you're scared and you're full of fear to figure out what's necessary and what you need to do for your family or for work. I agree with everything Michelle said.
Yeah, it really comes down to balance, huh?
It does, and I think the features the loneliness and isolation that many older folks are experiencing, and not all of them. And I should say, not all older folks and seniors are experiencing increased anxiety or loneliness or isolation. Something that comes with age is also wisdom and perspective, right? So we have people that might be managing better than someone younger. However, loneliness and isolation is a very real issue, and so we want to think about ways to help with that, which I'm sure we've all done. Is FaceTiming more, writing letters, having virtual get-togethers, holidays, things like that. It's not the same, but it does really help.
Wow, very good. I just had another question come in about Reset, our product. Actually, I saw it. The question is, I saw the product on your website. I understand it's meant to help when stressed. How does it help, and how often would I use it? So I guess I can answer that question. The way in which, one of the things that we do at Reset, we do have nutritional supplements. That's just one pillar of three that we really focus on. The other two is really around cognitive and mindset education, as well as behavioral techniques and other reinforcing exercises and things that you can do. The other part is around physical, and that really takes into consideration the physical response to stress. So we've talked a lot, already about situational stress and how we're managing it and how we're trying to balance it. And, for us, when we looked at the science of stress really has an effect on three systems in your body. And it starts in the nervous system. That activates, in turn, your endocrine system, which is responsible for regulation of hormones like cortisol, which is involved in the stress response. And then your immune system, too, is activated. And all three of these systems are tightly integrated. So when one is undergoing stress, they're all three, in turn, stressed. And we refer to this as them being imbalanced. So your three main systems that are amplified by stress become imbalanced. So our product that we did develop here really focused on those three systems to address the three systems of your body. And what we did is we really looked at the science. We looked at the clinical support behind it, and the ingredients that we used in our product are all natural ingredients that really are designed in a way to support those three systems. So we target different parts of those three systems to essentially rebalance all three of those systems to give you a better support for your stress response. Most products on the market typically will focus on one of those. For example, most of them focus on the nervous system to try to calm the nervous system, but what happens are the other two are still imbalanced. So you never really reach that point of what they refer to in the literature of allostasis or balance across those systems. And that's what we designed our product to do. Someone was asking, where can you get them? On our website is one, but we also just recently launched in Target and on Target.com. And pretty soon, in about a week and a half, we'll be rolling out nationally in CVS and at CVS.com. So that's the one pillar. But again, for us, that's only one of the three pillars that are so important. Having experts like Michelle, and we had Dr. Aldeo on last week, who really is an expert in cognitive behavioral therapy and techniques, and really helping people understand how they perceive stress. And Michelle, you had a good comment earlier really about you kind of have to give yourself a little bit of a break right now, right? And Stephanie, you mentioned really being hard on yourself. I think being successful, really you really challenge yourself, and with the with the drive and the ambition to really become successful, and along with that is stress. But again, it's not all bad stress, because if you didn't have that stress, you probably wouldn't have been motivated to do it. And so, balancing that out, and thinking and understanding what stress really is, and changing your perception of stress, that it's not all bad, that you can use it. My daughter today was taking her psychology, of all things, final online. She's a junior in college. And, for the last 2 days, she's been motivated. And it was a healthy stress. And she came down and was so proud to say that, she got a 97 on that final exam. And so without that motivation, without good stress, who knows? She could have been up listening to Spotify and then got online and took it. And she had no stress, but she would not also have a diploma either. So stress can be a good thing, and really approaching it. And that's what we try to do with experts, with Michelle, as well as others on our scientific advisory board, really to educate people, especially now. We had no idea that we would be facing a pandemic when we started this company about 1.5 years ago. So now, we feel our mission's even more critical today to really educate. And hence why we're having these webinars, is really to get the word out, and educate people how to manage through this. So I hope that answers the question that this person wrote into. But that's our approach to stress. Michelle, perhaps you could give some examples of some of the behavioral things that
Sure.
you instruct people, and we've talked about too as well.
Well, I was also thinking about the 14-day reset. So just how incredibly important that is as the behavioral, psychological component to stress. So these are a series of 14 very effective, highly researched, well-documented behavioral techniques to stress. So things like practicing gratitude, learning how to take deep breaths. My mom actually talked to me one about today. Was her petting a dog, pet something. And she's like, I need to borrow somebody's animal. So they're just, they're amazing, well put together. And for me, the first one, just, that everybody should be doing, in my opinion, is deep breathing. The benefit of taking 3 truly deep breaths, that sort of belly breath or diaphragm breath, taking 3 deep breaths, at least 3, is just the most simple and effective way of calming your mind and body. So I know on the website there's videos and there's descriptions and there's a lot on that. And I think that, core one, and then you build on so many others. And I think not everything works for everyone. So I think having a bunch of different behavioral strategies and techniques, I think is just really great that they're all in one place, and they're well chosen, very well chosen.
That's great. And Stephanie, what do you do? I imagine your outlet is rodeos, even though to me that sounds very stressful.
Now? Sorry, my internet looks like it's going in and out a little bit. But I heard the question. So yes, definitely rodeo and horses. And I know that one of those pillars is pet something, and being around animals. That's probably my number one stress relief, is being around the animals, just going just to spend time with them in the stall, or even more, riding them. spending an hour or two with them probably has the most significant impact on me. Something that Michelle mentioned too, the gratitude. I have a gratitude journal, and I'm always writing in my gratitude journal, and that is something that's been extremely helpful for me.
That's great. I got a question in here. I guess for Michelle, this person here is asking, how do you suggest beginning a yoga meditation practice, which they had just started before COVID? What's your advice on how to create a practice out of this kind of challenging environment?
Yeah. Well, that's great that people are wanting to practice that, because it's a really good time to continue that practice. So we're lucky that we have this Zoom technology, and I know many yoga studios are doing virtual classes. There's lots of great apps, and some are free that you can get for simple meditation. I think that be patient with yourself, even if we talked a little bit about, high expectations during this time, and people wanting to, meditate for hours and, minutes, just, seconds, minutes, it just start small and don't put unrealistic expectations on your practice. It's so beneficial, even if it's a short amount of time. So just, if you can do something each day or every other day, even if it's just for a few minutes, for you, and then help you continue that pattern. I know it's not the same as being in a yoga studio, but it's better than nothing. And sometimes we can do it on our own when we have the time, so we're not necessarily subject to schedules and people's studio hours.
And you are a yoga certified trainer, is that correct?
I'm a certified yoga instructor, yeah. I did the training years ago. I've been practicing yoga for decades, but I did the training years ago mainly to deepen my own practice, and to use it as a psychologist. I don't teach yoga classes anymore. I did, a few, but mainly it was for me to learn the most I could about breathing, so that I could use that in my.
Yep. Very good. And Stephanie, for you, are there other outlets that you use? You mentioned, the animals, which is great, as we were talking about earlier. Are those things that you incorporate as well?
What was that last part, Eric? I'm sorry.
Are there other outlets that you incorporate, like yoga or other types of activity?
Exercise. I'm a runner.
Ah.
Yes, I don't do a lot of it in the winter because we have big winters here, and I'm not much for going to the gym. I like to run on the street, so I'm building back up, and that is the best feeling for me. So my kids, when I'm at home, that 2-hour nap time that I get, I take advantage of it. And one of the things that I do is I run. And that's irreplaceable. It's an amazing feeling that provides.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to the physical part, and just especially now, being locked up, cooped up. Michelle, are there things that people can do? Obviously, we can do yoga through Zoom and other things, but are there things people can do in their home to take that few minutes for themselves to kind of recenter themselves?
Yeah. So absolutely. And I go back to the primary thing for me is that really checking in with yourself, closing your eyes and doing a few really deep breaths. I think in terms of what works for people, right, we're so varied. So I think the message is to be just incredibly kind to yourself right now. So that could look very different. That could be baking yourself a treat. That could be a glass of wine. That could be a social conversation with friends. That could be doing puzzles, right? There's so many things. And we can be creative. Of course, being outdoors is great if you have the option to sort of walk outside or be outside or run, as Stephanie does, but we're all quite different in what nurtures us and what feeds us. So I think we have to really think about that. And what are we missing? Maybe we're missing that freedom of being outside or getting fresh air, or maybe we're missing alone time. Maybe we're missing some sort of comfort that we're not having right now. So it's personal. And I guess I just encourage people to be generous with themselves and to really think about what nurtures them and give themselves permission to do kind things for themselves every day.
That's great. Another question that came in, how has COVID impacted each of you personally, and how do you deal with your stress? I mean, we talked a little bit about the stress, but more specifically, how has COVID really kind of impacted your life today? Stephanie, maybe you would want to start?
Yeah, so when the whole COVID thing first started, I was really scared and not sure what to do. A new business, I've got kids that were at daycare, I have horses that I want to pro rodeo. But I decided that I was going to use it for the better. So I got out my journal, which I use often, and made a bunch of lists. And my husband and I made lists of things we're going to do at the house. It's probably 40 items long, and we're tackling it. I made lists for every horse, what I needed to do to get to know that horse and to be able to perform better once rodeo season began. And I'm thinking in particular of a newer horse that I have, that I would be out there rodeoing, spending a lot of money on him. But instead, I have been at home doing foundation and training and getting to know this horse. And we are going to be way better in the long run because of it. So I'm actually kind of grateful for this opportunity. And it's going to make me better and stronger, and our house is going to be a lot nicer. So really scared at first, but turned all of that into something good.
Yeah, I mean, and that speaks to the mindset, right? You changed your mindset, and you're approaching it from a different point of view, and now you're realizing really the opportunity that you've had. Michelle, how about you?
So I'm, very lucky in that we're healthy, and my family, my extended family, my husband's family, we're all healthy and well. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. I have 2 teenagers, as I mentioned, and who are doing great, and they're real troopers. But I was talking to you guys before that really having adolescents is interesting at this time, having them home. Because really, developmentally, this is the opposite of what teenagers do at this time, which is stay home with mom and dad. So that's been interesting, and we've been talking a lot about things like that. And again, they're doing well. I've been doing a lot of puzzles, I have to say. My husband and I got really into puzzles. So I actually wrote something about sort of a meditative, mindful aspect of puzzling, which I certainly agree with. I think that, like many other people, I have really hopeful and positive and inspiring days, and I have other days where I don't feel so great. And I do hit a wall. So I think just sort of allowing myself to feel that and feel what I feel and be kind and generous to myself has been helpful and reminds me of something, basically just, practicing what I preach. I've certainly been doing a lot of that. So for that, I am grateful as well.
That's great. That's great. And I love both of you, I think, have mentioned it a couple times, just being easier on yourself, and then you're really looking at, and I catch myself when I'm taking myself too serious lately, just to laugh, right? And it's like, really, is it really that important? Why? If anything, it's made us slow down and really reflect on our life and what is important and what is less important now. And, you know, as a result, as we move forward, as we all will, I think this will really help us, you know, and it's an opportunity again to do some of that reflection and just give, you know, yourself that ability to, you know, get comfortable with your thoughts and move forward.
Yeah.
I had a question here that came in. My wife and I were talking about this the other night. What would you address? How would you address stress eating? As I refer to it as my COVID-19 diet right now. Although I'm a health nut, you know, you reach for comfort. You know, things that make you feel good. How would you deal with that? How should you deal with that?
Well, stress eating is essentially eating when you're not hungry and eating sort of mindlessly, reaching for food to numb feelings, right? And it could be just boredom, or it could be more significant feelings like sadness and loss and disappointment. And so it's sort of, again, like we're saying, a balance here, right? So again, I mentioned do nice things for yourself. You know, if you are really enjoying cooking right now or baking and you do have some more treats, or you are finding that that's a way that you're giving yourself some enjoyment, great. But it's always got to be within balance, right? So we don't want, once it goes a little bit further, then we feel bad about it, right? So it's sort of these things where we can hopefully enjoy, but if we overindulge, we end up feeling bad about ourselves and just worse. So I think mindfulness is basically checking in with yourself, paying attention here and now in the present moment. So when you are reaching for food, asking yourself why, right? Is it hunger? Is it boredom? And you don't have to, you know, if it's not hunger, you can't have it, but just get in the practice of asking yourself and being aware of your own hunger and your fullness and your boredom and your sadness, or whatever it is, right? Mindless eating. So I would just say that the way to deal with that is really to stop and ask yourself these questions when you are pulled toward, you know, a few more snacks than you need or that you were hoping to have.
Right, right. Stephanie, have you had any experience with that with you or your children who might be bored and stressed and
An interesting experience when you have two kids in the house and they want cinnamon rolls and Twizzlers and popsicles and all of the good stuff that, you know, I would like too, but I know is not the best. And that's really difficult. I think before I had kids and even a husband, my pantry, my fridge was much healthier. And then when you're around other people, that changes. And so dealing with that and trying to figure out a good balance has been hard. But yeah, to do that, I've been trying to do exactly what Michelle said. So when the kids had a cinnamon roll last night, I had a couple bites instead of a whole roll. And you know, they have a Twizzler and I just take a little bite instead of having a whole Twizzler. And so I think moderation and having a little bit, indulging a little bit, but not having the whole bag is what I have to do to feel satisfied, but still not overconsume.
Very good. So moderation. I have one last question before we end. I think it's very relevant. Michelle, we were, and Stephanie, we were talking earlier just about different parts of the country and how different states are responding to, you know, the whole COVID thing. How would you, Michelle, recommend, or what would you recommend to help balance variations among different family members? So this question more is specific about, you know, you have some that say, oh, this isn't a big deal, I'm going to go out. You have others who are afraid to come out of their bedroom. How do you balance that from a parent point of view, you know, to manage these different situations?
It's a really excellent question, and I'm hearing this a lot. different parts of the country or exact same part of the country in the same house, right? People having a different sense of how to proceed. And I guess the simple answer is that we have to respect each other's opinions, and we can't push people to do things that we don't want them to do. I'm often asked about perhaps with having older parents who maybe want to go out and we're worried that they're going out or things like that. And again, it comes down to the sense of we need to give each other information, and we need to try and really help people understand their personal risks. But we also need to be respectful, right, of people's choices and know our own boundaries. And if something is okay for certain parts of your family, but it's not okay for you, you can sensitively and patiently explain your point of view and just show respect for each other.
That's awesome. I have a couple more, but unfortunately we're almost out of time. And this has been a great discussion. I really appreciate both of you joining us tonight. Next week, we will have another webinar at the same time. So next Tuesday, May 12th at 6:30. And what we're going to be talking there, we're going to dive in a little bit more about post-COVID stress management, behaviors to start, stop, and continue, which I think will be a very interesting topic. We're having another person from our scientific advisory board join us, Dr. Lori Nathanson, as well as another special guest. To help have I think another great discussion, certainly on everybody's mind. So with that, I thank both of you again for taking time out. I wish you the best out there, Stephanie. Enjoy the riding, and hopefully you can get back to the rodeo soon as well. And Michelle, again, thanks so much. And wishing you the best down in Florida. I wish we had your weather up here. It's getting nicer, but it's not as nice as what you're having down there. And everybody who tuned in tonight, thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope it was helpful. For more information, as well as if you want to see the recording, you can look at our website. It's reset.com, spelled R3SET, reset, R3set.com, where there we have a lot more content, blog articles, and also we'll be posting the webinars as well. So thank you, and all of you stay safe and healthy, and hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.